Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swami Tapaharine Sthapakaya Dharmasya Sarva Dharma Swarupine Avataro Parishthayo Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagatgurum Padapadme Tvayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhur. So, welcome everybody to the 6th class on Swami Vivekananda's Karma Yoga, the science of action. So, we're going to continue with where we left off. For those of you who have the text, please open to the text, chapter 3, The Secret of Work. Now, we're at the bottom of page 2. We read in the Bhagavad Gita again and again. Now, real quickly, like I always do, we'll just do a quick summary last time what we spoke about. So last time we compared Swami Vivekananda's hierarchy of needs with one famous psychologist, onar naam Abraham Maslow. Abraham Maslow designed this pyramid called the hierarchy of needs. He said that man's first need, খাওয়া দাওয়া, eating, sleeping, একটা জায়গা থাকতে হবে. In Bengali, that means a place to stay. And that's the first stage of needs. Tarpore, the next stage is what? Next stage is job security. You know, Swamiji said, Thakur Ramakrishna said, Khali pet dharma hoina. So on an empty stomach, one cannot practice spirituality. So after that, job security. Then next stage is recognition by our peers that I'm in a certain line of work. My community respects me. I'm a shaman pai. That stage. Then finally you go to these different stages, and last stage, Abraham Maslow calls self-actualization. That means you transcend these stages. You become the best version of yourself. Now, what we showed last time and what Swami Vivekananda talked about, it's at that last stage of wanting recognition from others. As a spiritual aspirant, as a monk, we strive to invert those. Mane, say the first stage, food and shelter. For a monk, a sadhu, or even a spiritual aspirant, Swamiji ekta jayga bolechilen that where is my home? Amar bari kothay? It's under the sky. So slowly, we detach ourselves from these things that everybody wants. So basic food and shelter, our necessity for food becomes less. We become less attached to food, less attached to basic necessities. And so on, we keep going up. And finally, our stage is self-transcendence, transcendence of the self. So that's what we spoke about last time. That talk is posted online, so for those of you who'd like to see it, you can see the Advaita Ashrama website. So now let's get to part 2 today. Today's talk is non-attachment and the science of motivation. Now this almost seems like a contradiction. All of you know, Shobai Janan, a Gita 2.47. What does it say? Karmane vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. What does that mean? You have a right to the work. You have a right only to the work, but don't expect the fruits thereof. Then, in the second part of that shloka, what does Sri Krishna say? Karmane vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala hetu bhuhu ma te sangosto karmani. So don't, at the same time, don't be attached to the fruits of the work. And the last one, don't be attached to inaction, right? This is what 2.47 says. Now, if we think about it, that is probably one of the most difficult things to practice and one of the greatest contradictions for us. Let me give you an example. Some housewives are sitting here. So, jodi apni mane, if Shami jonno, ma babar jonno, for your husband, your family, your mother, father, if you Sharadine chesta korben, you're cooking a nice dish, you're cooking a nice dish for others, and after cooking and laboring so hard, what happens then? The people who eat the food, oof, ki diyechin. You've worked so hard for 3-4 days, and then this is the reaction. Let's be honest, if that happens, how would we feel if we had to cook another meal for them? So this idea that when we put our best effort in, we're expecting some appreciation, some positive feedback. Similarly, if you're a student, you're preparing for your examination, you work very hard day and night, you don't get a good result. So this is what, when Sri Krishna says, do not be attached to inaction, but don't expect the fruits of the work. Does everybody understand how difficult that actually is? It's a walking contradiction. In fact, Swamiji says, when he went to the West, he told so many people about the Gita. Everybody, shobai bolechilen, oh Swamiji, ami eta kori. I do that. Oh, I already do that. Because it sounds so simple. But Swami Vivekananda said, I've traveled around this entire earth, and I have hardly met 5 people who are actually like Janaka Rajas, like King Janaka, who were truly yogis and could do work and be unattached to the action. So are we clear on that so far? So let me just read from what Swamiji says in the text right here. We read in the Bhagavad Gita again and again that we must all work incessantly. All work is by nature composed of good and evil. We cannot do any work which will not do some good somewhere. There cannot be any work which will not cause some harm somewhere. Every work must be a mixture of good and evil. So then Swamiji continues, but good and bad are both bondages of the soul. The solution reached in the Gita in regard to this bondage producing nature of work is that if we do not attach ourselves to the work we do, it will not have any binding effect on our soul. We shall try to understand what is meant by non-attachment to work. So Swamiji is going to explain in this lecture what is meant by non-attachment. And he's going to talk about this. This is the one idea in the Gita, work incessantly, but be not attached to it. So I've mentioned that. We understand how difficult that is. Work incessantly. I'm working very hard, but I'm not getting the fruits of the labor. How hard that is to actually do. Now, Swamiji is now going to explain in the next part how to be unattached to the work. I want to summarize that, what Swamiji says, and then I want to come to a more important point, and that is this. When Swamiji says practice non-attachment, that can only come from a person who first does it, who is first attached to the work. They fully attach to the work. Through this attachment, they learn non-attachment. It's not the other way around. We have Rakesh right here. He set up the whole platform. If he's not attached to the work, if he says, jar kushi koro, if he doesn't care, Is that what Swamiji means by non-attachment? Do whatever you want. No. 1,000 times any day, I'd rather have a micromanager on the job rather than somebody who doesn't care. So this is one key point we have to understand. To get to the state of non-attachment, we first have to go through attachment. Now, in fact, this is not something I'm making up. Besides Swamiji's words, this is how Swami Vivekananda trained his best workers in starting this Ramakrishna Mountain mission. Let me give you an example. Swami Trigunatitananda, he wrote one, how many of you have heard Udbodhan Patrika, the Bengali journal? Udbodhan Patrika, the Bengali monthly journal. So Swami Vivekananda inspired Swami Trigunatitananda ji to start this journal. He said that, come, here is a task for you. Conduct that magazine, thrust it on people, and make them subscribe, and don't be afraid. You must have an iron will if you would cross the ocean. So then in another place, Swamiji said to Trigunatitananda ji, I'll first read it in Bangla, then translate it in English. এই পত্রিকার সফলতার উপর যেন তোমার মুক্তি নির্ভর করছে সেভাবে কাজ করো. So the translation is, work upon this magazine as if your mukti, your salvation, depends upon the success of this journal. So does this sound like non-attachment? Does Swamiji tell Trigunatitananda, jar kusi koro, just chesta koro, do something, try something, don't worry about it? No. He said, in Bangla, pran theke chesta koro, from the very depths of your soul, try. And your mukti depends upon it. Sister Nivedita, Margaret Noble, Swamiji's preeminent disciple, Swamiji had trained her, encouraged her to serve Mother India. So how did he train her? He spent months and months teaching her about Mother India. He engaged in discussions, arguments. And after all this training, what did he do? He took Nivedita to Amarnath in July of 1898. And there, what did he do? Did he offer her that, I give her mukti? Or did he say that, give her non-attachment? No. Swamiji বলেছিলেন, she said, I'm offering you to Lord Shiva so that your Shakti can get awakened. Spiritually, I don't know. He said, let your Shakti get awakened. Let your will get awakened. So and he said, work for Mother India in life and in death. So does this sound like traditional non-attachment? The type of non-attachment he taught her, that he scolded her and he crushed her ego, be a non-attached to, in Bangla we say, Nijer mama aham, our own sense of my and I. Be unattached to this, but not to the work itself. So this is actually the training Swami Vivekananda gave to all his disciples, brother disciples. It's called the science of motivation. How can we cultivate the proper motivation when engaged in work? Remember, there's two aspects to work in this secret of work. One is the aspect of attachment, and the other is what? What? Detachment, yes. As Swamiji said in Bangla and Sanskrit, Anurag Virag. Anurag means attach yourself, and Virag, detach. And Swamiji said, I think in another lecture, the problem with us is we can't, it's easy for us to get attached, but then it's very difficult for us to detach. Now, what I want to talk about today, I want to compare what Swamiji talked about to a person named, a psychologist in the late 20th century. You could look him up. His name is Edward Deci. He's the founder of a theory called the self-determination theory. This is I find that his principles are ultimately what Swamiji taught in what we call the science of motivation. Now, he talked about there's 3 basic principles that are necessary to do work which is meaningful and fulfilling. These 3 principles are, number 1, autonomy. Any work that we do, it should be voluntary. Amar nije ichha, my own will. In Bangladesh we say not Baba Maier ichha, not my parents' will, not somebody else. No, I'm doing, I want to do. Okay, it's coming from within. This is called autonomy. Second is, and we'll go over each of these things. Second is adhikari. It's mentioned in the Gita. That means competence. Whatever I do it very skillfully. We'll talk about that. In the Gita it's there, karma sukoshalam. Yoga karma sukoshalam. Skill in action. The third part, relationality, connection. Connection with what? With people, as Swamiji's training goes, the divine. Shiva Gyane Jiva Sheva. These 3 elements. Now, it was really interesting what Edward Deci did. He did an experiment. He placed 2 sets of students in a room. One set of students, he gave them to solve a puzzle. And one set of students, he paid them money. Taka diyeche. And another set of students, he just voluntarily they're there. So each of them worked on the puzzle for about 30 minutes. Tarpore ki holo? After that, they took a break. During the break, they studied what the students did. During the break, those who received money, what did they do? They did other work, except anything but working on the puzzle. But those who did not receive money, jokon this break chilo, at that time, they tried to work on the puzzle even more. They were engaged with the puzzle. That engagement, that intrinsic quality of being engaged with the subject, what he found in studies is quite contrary to how society teaches us, how the school system works. The example I can give you is this. If একটা ছেলে আছে, a son or daughter is there, if you tell them, if you get a good grade on your school examination, I'll give you a car, I'll give you a vehicle. So what will happen at that time? They'll do well on the examination. You give them the vehicle. What they find is those kids, those people, their love for the subject gets reduced. So one is what you call intrinsic motivation, mean my own love for the subject, and the second side is extrinsic reward. They call it carrot and stick. And they find the more we give extrinsic rewards, the more our love for the subject reduces. So say that we have a meditation session and say that you all সবাই এখানে আসছেন, everybody comes. Rather, I give each of you, okay, I'll give each of you 1,000 rupees if you come every Saturday and sit here for 1 hour meditation. So what will happen then? You might get more wealthy, you might get richer in terms of money. But what they find is that desire to meditate, what Ramakrishna said, bhagyulata, which means yearning, that correspondingly reduces. Is that clear? In fact, that's why they say that, I wish I had the Katamrita in front of me, but that's why they say that even Ramakrishna was consulting this Shoshodhar, Pandit Shoshodhar. I think he said that you're already at a kola gach banana tree, and at Kadi Pecho, this bundle of bananas you've already got without even climbing the tree. So you're preaching without having realized anything. Ar sadhan bhajan koro, do more sadhana, do more spiritual practices. So that's what happens too. If someone gets success too quickly, then they find that person stops growing, that their focus changes from studies and trying to grow, trying to transform. Rather, they're looking at the size of the crowd, the external rewards. Okay, so now let's talk about that. Element number 1, what Edward Deci said, the idea of autonomy, not acting from compulsion. How do we practice that? Oh, one thing I'm going to say about that, people find that if you do work under compulsion, not that you want to, but because you feel like you're forced to, studies have shown, that leads to increased stress, alienation, depression, poorer health, higher job turnover. So we find that in many companies. In fact, this is related to those who are supervisors in work. You can find it. If you have a boss that is always dominating over you, that makes people less likely to want to come to work. You're taking away that person's autonomy. Now, this all sounds fine and good. This idea of doing things autonomously, not under compulsion. But the reality is something different. The reality is that we all have to do. Say I'm a boy, and I have to go to school. I may not feel like it, but I have to go. You might have a job. You may not like your job, but you have to go to the job. You have payments. So this idea of free choice is actually not as free as we think. So what is the way out? So I'll give you a few different techniques, what Swamiji talks about, what Ramakrishna mentioned. One is, Ramakrishna mentions these ideas, and afterwards, and so does Swamiji, and afterwards psychologists have put these ideas into practice. They gave the principles, and now they've been put into practice by different psychologists. One is the growth mindset. That is from Dr. Carol Dweck. She wrote a book called The Mindset. It's very similar to Ramakrishna's Javad Bachi Tavat Shiki. As long I live, so long I learn. So that means that, say I'm studying for an examination. Rather than studying for an examination to get, the parents are saying, you better get a good score. Rather than doing it for a good score or whatever, I'm doing it because I get to increase my knowledge. I'm learning something new. As I increase my knowledge, my love for the subject grows. As I increase my knowledge, my curiosity increases. You know, one practical point on this, you know, with the AI and all these things, what they find is that so much knowledge is now available that people are no longer impressed by your knowledge. More employers even today, they're looking for what? Curiosity. inquisitiveness, versatility in problem solving. As we say in Vedanta, vichara. So in this growth mindset, one way to do things, this change of attitude. I understand what I know, I give respect to that, and then I know what I don't know. This idea of I know where I stand, and I can build upon that. So that's one way, this growth mindset. Swamiji talks about focusing on the means. You can say a state of flow, focusing, being in the moment, focusing on the means and the ends must come. So for some people that might mean, I'm doing this, when I do something, some new insights come. I learn something new. I get not even external knowledge, internal knowledge. I learn something new. Things I can share with other people. Practical knowledge. Now, in our monastic life, I've given you now the worldly perspective. In monastic life, I'm going to tell you how I think the greatest karma yogis I've ever met are sadhus. Because we don't have a choice. If the general secretary says you go here, you have to go. You can't say, Ami jeta China, I don't want to go. You must go. Why do we say that? We think that this is where the monastic view, general secretary, his adesh, that command that's coming, manush teke aschina. It's not coming from a man. It's coming, as we say in Bangla, Bhagavan teke asche, from God himself, from Thakur himself. Let me just give you an example of, I like this very much. One Swami Shukatmanandaji. He's a retired monk. He was posted for many years in a center called Along. How many of you have heard of Along? It's a tough center in the northeast. And he writes about this in the latest Prabhuta Bharata. He says, when he overheard that the general secretary wanted to send him to Along, he trembled. He said, no, someone told him, who would want to go to that wild place? Someone told him that. So many sadhus were avoiding going to Along. And yet when the general secretary called him one day in early 1971 and asked with a characteristic quietness whether he would be willing to go to Along, he himself said without deliberation, yes, I have no objection and would go if you send me. Then he adds, the words came before the mind could weigh them. Perhaps something in the nature of service is like that. One does not so much decide to go as one finds that one has already consented. This idea that we're doing it for some higher purpose, not based on my own likes or dislike. So some faith is there. Okay, Jachi, maybe something good will happen to me from there. Is that clear? So in this element of autonomy, which Edward Deci talks about, we don't always get to choose whether we're a householder or a monk. But what we can choose is what? This attitude, this bhav. This is what Swami Vivekananda was training his disciples to do. It's what he was training Sri Gunatinandaji to do, Sister Nivedita. It's what the Swami was doing. It's what we all try to do. Is that clear? This attitude. So the lesson is that next time if some work is assigned, before saying no, just take a step back. Oh, another monk, Swami Krishnanandaji. He is an old American monk in Hollywood. He passed away at the age of 98. Many considered him to be a realized soul. One of the American monks, a white monk, who was a realized soul. And the one thing he hated to do in life was washing dishes. So you know what? In America, it's not like India. In America, everyone has to do the cooking, the cleaning, preaching. In Bangla, we say, Kajir loke sab kaj kori. In Bengali, we say that all these workers we have in India's ashrams, but in America, you have to be the Kajir lok, you have to be the Mahanta, you have to be the head and the tail. Everything you have to do. So, Swami Krishnananda ji, the one thing, he came from a very wealthy family. So maybe growing up, he didn't do much washing with dishes. We could say manual work. So after meals, in the monastery kitchen in Hollywood, there would be a huge stack of dishes. So what would Swami Krishnananda ji do? He would rush towards the dishes, get in there and start cleaning. Why did he do that? In the Yoga Sutras, it's called Pratipaksha Bhavanam, counter attitude. If I don't want to do something, because the Gita says not to have strong likes or dislikes. So if I'm having some strong dislike, how do I face that? Let me jump into it. That's what Swami Krishnananda ji did. Now, the second aspect, we've been talking about the first element Edward Deci talked about, per the science of motivation, which is compulsion, doing things out of a voluntary, not doing things from compulsion, but doing things voluntarily, and that regards a shift in attitude. The second element, which Swamiji also trained his workers to cultivate the proper motivation, is competency. The Sanskrit word for competency in Vedanta, adhikari. Adhikari, competency. One Gita's shloka is there. Right after, see how intelligent Krishna is. After he karmane vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, after he quoted that, then shortly thereafter he quotes buddhi yukto jahatiha subhe ubhe sukrita drushkrite tasma yogaya yujaswa yogaf karmasukoshalam. Yogaf karmasukoshalam means what? Skill in action. So this is the second element of proper motivation. Doing things skillfully. It's not possible to be clumsy about the work and call it karma yoga. We don't build motivation by doing things not in a proper way. You know who was very adamant about this? Swami Vivekananda. He was so tough on his brother disciples and monastic disciples that before the first Durga Puja in Bellarmont, he asked the Holy Mother, Ma amake ekta mata bata diye dao, give me a headache. Kyano? Mother asked why? And then Swamiji bolichilen, because if I see these workers, if they do any kind of slipshod work, I might scold them and slap them. Then he gave himself a headache. And after the puja was over, he came back again. So he was very adamant about being perfect in work, skillfulness in action. Now there's a way to do that. How many of you have heard of that book, Flow? Flow. There they talk about two elements, skills and challenges. They said to be in the flow of work. Flow means what? I forget my sense of I. I forget my sense of mine. I'm just in the moment, in the flow. How do you get there? Two elements. One is skill. I should always be trying to update my skill level. Wherever I am, I should be trying to get better. So that's good. But sometimes, say that if my skill level is high, say I'm playing table tennis. If my skill level is high and my opponent is not so good, will I be in flow? No. Why? I'll be in boredom because I'm too good, the other person's bad. So skills versus challenges. The other aspect, if my skill level is low, I'm playing table tennis, the other person's like a world-class player, he's smashing and I'm then will I be in flow? No. What will be my state then? Anxiety. So that proper balance between skills, updating our skills, and challenges. And that could be done in any type of work. That's a way to be in the flow of work. And there's other ways. One thing I have to say, everybody here, I'm assuming, has a spiritual attitude, but that doesn't mean everybody is the same. So some people, I've met them, they might like to do japa. Some people might think, okay, I'm doing this as a service to the Lord. Some people might want to, everyone has a different temperament. So it's really, everyone has to discover for themselves what works for them. There's not any one size fits all, even for spiritual aspirants. Is that clear? So that second aspect, okay, so the first aspect was doing things autonomously. The second aspect is doing things not from a sense of skillfulness, working on that. And there's a third element, that is relationality. Let me give the best example of that. One Swami Ramananda in San Diego, he's a spiritual Hindu chaplain. So he's a monk, but he is also a chaplain. What does that mean? He listens to the people's problems. They come, they tell them his problems, and he tries to listen and tries to advise. Now, the idea of this chaplaincy and anything that we do, to make it a karma yoga, connection. To make any work meaningful, we have to have some connection. What do I mean? If you work in a hospital, if you have patients, if the patients are always grumbling, you might be doing your best. You might have you might be doing this. You might have autonomy. I'm a doctor because I want to be. I have my own office. You might have skillfulness, but if that connection is not there with the patient, if sometimes the doctors, how many of you have had this? The doctor's writing the prescription for you, but he's not really seeing you. That connection between the doctor and the patient is not there. Doctor-patient, I'm not just picking on doctors, any profession. If that connection with your boss, with your employee, with your parents, with your spouse, if that connection is not there, somehow that work does not become meaningful. Am I correct about that? That connection. Now, the problem with this is, as the Gita says, we can't expect that connection sometimes happens, it sometimes does not. So how are we supposed to act? So in that line, and I mentioned this before, this idea, this Vedantic attitude that Swamiji talked about, that Ramakrishna talked about, Shiva Gyani Jiva Sheva, knowing oneself as Shiva, serving that same Shiva in others. What does that mean practically? I think I've mentioned that Swami in Kashi, they used to call him the living Shiva. Excuse me. They used to call him the living Shiva. And what did he do? He would, I think Ban Bihari Maharaj, when he would serve patients, it was like those who witnessed it, it is like they were witnessing actually he was not even a doctor, he tended the wounds of the patients. So when he would serve these patients, it was like, it wasn't like a hospital room. You know the smell, you can go to our Sheva Pratishthan, you know that smell, that antiseptic smell, you know when you walk into a hospital, right? It has its own tanmatra, its own vibration. I mean, you can close your eyes, I can take you there and you can feel, without even opening your eyes, I'm in a hospital. Same thing if I take you to Bellarmont, that tanmatra is there. All of you know that, right? A spiritual place when you come to. It has a different smell, a different vibration. Now, the amazing thing is when you see this Ban Bihari Maharaj and he's tending the wounds of this patient, you don't feel like you're in a hospital. People who were there felt this took place in Kashi, they felt like they were in the inner sanctum of Vishwanath temple. That's what they felt like. That's why they called him Jagrata Vishwanath. They called him the living Vishwanath. That attitude that God, he's serving God. He's not serving. It's all Advaita. It's all Vijnana. I'm seeing Shiva and I'm serving Shiva. That's the highest element of this relationality. And that's our goal as karma yogis. Nothing less. So that third element, relationality, one point I want to add to that, whatever your profession may be, we can always practice this. There's this psychologist Carl Rogers. I don't know how many of you have heard of him. He's a famous psychologist. He talked about this. He wrote this beautiful article, through listening one can attain liberation. How? When you really connect with that person's sharing, you're not just listening, but you're listening with what we call curiosity. That person's telling their problems, telling their story, and you're just with them. That becomes very liberating for both the speaker as well as the listener. And that's something that we can all try to practice in our home, in our work. There's somebody that needs to be listened to. This is something that is really probably one of the most unselfish activities we can do today. Listening to another person when we don't have to, but listening with full attention and curiosity. That's the third element. So today we've talked about these three elements, okay? What are the three elements we talked about? Autonomy, yes. Incompetency, yeah, competency, yes. And connection, yes, connect, very good. Okay, so that's what we're talking about with attachment, okay? Remember what I said. Swamiji talks about non-attachment. So now we're going to conclude with Swamiji's words. But to get to the state of non-attachment, we have to go through what? Attachment. Okay, now let me open up the rest of the text now. And we'll complete that. Okay. Now what Swamiji is going to talk about, now once you understand this concept, and we're doing it, now the next idea is, how do we work in such a way that we don't have stuff stick to us? Okay, that you understand stickiness. Anytime we're in the world, anything that we do, something sticks. That stickiness is a problem in spiritual life. You've seen a kukur, a dog, when it gets wet, what does it do? It sloughs off the water. So unfortunately, we'll have to learn to do that too. We have to work in such a way with attachment, but that things don't stick to us. Is that clear? So what does Swamiji says? He says, every work that we do, every movement of the body, every thought that we think leaves such an impression on the mind stuff, and even when such impressions are not obvious on the surface, they are sufficiently strong to work beneath the surface subconsciously. So these things, we don't realize it. They're all collecting under the subconscious. What we are every moment is determined by the sum total of these impressions on the mind. What I am just at this moment is the effect of the sum total of all the impressions of my past life. This is really what is meant by character. Each man's character is determined by the sum total of these impressions. If good impressions prevail, the character becomes good. If bad, it becomes bad. Okay, is that clear? If good comes, so that's a real eye-opener. Impressions means what? Anything that we're receiving. So think about now this is before Swamiji did not live in the time of social media. Think what we do with our mobile phone. Day and night, we're watching YouTube scrolls. We don't even know what we're watching. It just goes one after another. What's getting collected in the unconscious, the subconscious, we're not even aware of. So Swamiji now then continues, if a man continuously hears bad words, thinks bad thoughts, does bad actions, His mind will be full of bad impressions, and they will influence his thought and work without his being conscious of the fact. How many of you have seen people or have seen that in themselves? If you're in a bad mood, you keep talking bad about others. In fact, let me just say this. We could be listening to having a nice discussion right now, right? The moment you leave here, if you get a call and somebody starts telling you the latest gossip. At first, when we hear gossip, it's like rasam. It's something good. We relish it. But I challenge each of you, after a couple of minutes, if you can notice the subtle energy shift in the mind, suddenly if you keep listening, what felt like nectar immediately, suddenly becomes like in the Gita they say, bish, poison. All of you can notice it. Suddenly the whole energy shifts. These words shift the energy. Conversation shifts the energy. These YouTube videos we watch, they shift our energy. So Swamiji says, if a man continuously hears bad words, thinks bad thoughts, does bad actions, his mind will be full of bad impressions, and they will influence his work and thought and work without his being conscious. We see that in so many YouTubers, so many people, it's so easy to see that now. These terrorists, anyone who does these mass bombings, anything, what have they been doing day and night? Listening to these types of thoughts. Swamiji continues, in fact, these bad impressions are always working, and the resultant must be evil, and that man will be a bad man. He cannot help it. The sum total of these impressions in him will create the strong motive power for doing bad actions. So the words motive power create the strong, so by listening, by receiving, that creates the motive power for doing bad actions. He will be like a machine in the hands of his impressions, and they will force him to do evil. In other words, you can't really help a person at that time. Once they're so full of these negative thoughts, how many of you have met people like that? So full of negative thoughts that you can't say anything. You can see that the path they're going on, but it's too late. Why is that? Sri Aurobindo explains, whether it's good impressions or bad impressions, all these impressions are the sum total, they're all already within us. They're not coming from outside. When these impressions come from outside, it's like Aurobindo said, each human being has both light and darkness. Depending upon the impressions coming from outside, they will activate either that light or darkness. So Swamiji concludes, when a man has done so much good work and thoughts, so many good thoughts, that there is an irresistible tendency in him to do good in spite of himself. And even if he wishes to do evil, this mind, as the sum total of his tendencies, will not allow him to do so. The tendencies will turn him back. He is completely under the influence of the good tendencies. And this is one thing. I met this great monk, a very spiritual soul, in Hollywood. I was his shebak. He left his body a few years ago. One time, one person was really criticizing him and being very, very mean, saying many bad things. And then this monk, senior monk, told me, just spoke out loud, I have to be careful with my mind. Why? Because this monk's a very pure monk. His whole life, even one thought, if it goes astray, that person who's causing harm to that sadhu, he'll suffer. This monk was aware of that, so I have to be conscious of that. So that idea of even if something wants to do something, instinctively, he's done so many good things that he becomes incapable of causing harm to another. This is what we mean. Swamiji says the first step is we have to keep saturating ourselves with good thoughts, good deeds, unselfish. Keep doing it again and again and again and again. If negative things come, Swamiji says, like a reflex, go back to the positive. Thus alone, by this continuous reflex of good thoughts, good impressions moving over the surface of the mind. Notice the word reflex. Reflex means what? Something bad comes, but reflex. Immediately we go back to the good. The tendency for doing good becomes strong, and the result, we feel able to control the indriyas, the sense organs, the nerve centers. This is the true human being of self-control. He who's overwhelmingly positive. Is that true? Is that clear? Then they get control over their sense organs, and then the mind. Then he says, you may say that there's no worry for them. And then Swamiji just continues that you must remember that freedom of the goal is the goal. Freedom of the soul, mukti, is the goal of all yogas, and each one equally leads to the same result. So Swamiji is reminding us that our goal is not connection. Our goal is not working under freedom. Our goal is not relationships. Our goal is what? Mukti, as spiritual aspirants. Swamiji continues. Liberation means entire freedom. Freedom from the bondage of good as well as from the bondage of evil. A golden chain is so much a chain as an iron one. So, when you do any even good work, you get good karma. So, Holy Mother is the best example of this. Actually, it's in Meyer Ghat. There used to be one banyan tree there. So, Holy Mother, after taking bath in Meyer Ghat, then she would sometimes do some small puja. She would offer some fruits to the pujari. Then the pujari, after doing the puja, Ma ki dita chai chilan the fall. He wanted to give the fruit back to Mother. You offer it, then it comes back to you. Then Ma said, Na Baba, tomar kache reko. You keep that with yourself. What is Mother teaching us? She doesn't even want the good fruits of the action. Our goal is mukti, beyond good and bad. But to do that, we first have to get established in good, in positivity. So then Mother says that, Swamiji says, there is a thorn in my finger, and I use another to take the first one out, and when I have taken it out, I throw both of them aside. I have no necessity for keeping the second thorn, because both are thorns after all. So the bad tendencies are to be counteracted by the good ones, and the bad impressions on the mind should be removed by the fresh wave of good ones, until all that is evil almost disappears, or is subdued and held in control in a corner of the mind. But after that, the good tendencies have also to be conquered. Thus, the attached becomes the unattached. Is that clear? Swamiji concludes, the attached becomes the unattached. Swami then finally says, so work, but let not the action or the thought produce a deep impression on the mind. This is afterwards. First, let as many good thoughts, let them come in your mind and sleep everywhere. But afterwards, we get detached from those as well. Let the ripples come and go. Let huge actions proceed from the muscles in the brain, but let them not make any deep impression on the soul. So how can this be done? Swamiji says, we see that the impression of any action to which we attach ourselves remains. I may meet hundreds of persons during the day, and among them meet also one whom I love. And when I retire at night, I might try to think of all the faces I saw, but only that one face comes before the mind, the face which I met perhaps only for 1 minute, and which I loved. All the others have vanished. My attachment to this particular person caused a deeper impression on my mind than all the other faces. Physiologically, the impressions have all been the same, but that one face made the most impact. So Swamiji then concludes, perhaps I had pictured him in my mind for years, knew hundreds of things about him, and this one new vision of him awakened hundreds of sleeping memories in my mind. And this one impression, having been repeated perhaps 100 times more than those of the different faces together, will produce a great effect on the mind. So he's giving us another wonderful thing. If you switch it on its place, remember Swamiji talked about two elements, virag and anurag. In a different concept, virag means virag from this prakriti, from this materialism, and anurag to Ishvara, the Atman. So what he said, the more we know, say if your Ishta Devata is Ramakrishna or Holy Mother, the more you know about them, Nama, Rupa, their form, Guna, their qualities, the more we repeat these things, think about these things again and again, the more deep it becomes. What he's saying, then that love comes through this constant repetition. So I'm just going to conclude with this last Swamiji's sum up, and then we'll conclude. The whole gist of this teaching is that you should work like a master and not as a slave. Work incessantly, but do not do slave's work. Remember, that goes back to that element of autonomy. Don't be a slave. Do you not see how everybody works? Nobody can be altogether at rest. 99% of mankind work like slaves, and the result is misery. It is all selfish work. Work through freedom, work through love. The word love is very difficult to understand. Love never comes until there is freedom. There is no true love possible in the slave. If you buy a slave and tie him down in chains and make him work for you, he will work like a drudge, but there will be no love in him. So we could think, are we working today? We can end with that question. In our work, how are we working? Are we working as a master or as a slave? So in conclusion, that's the idea. Many things we don't have control over, but this idea of attitude, that I'm the master, and we talked about different ways to cultivate that proper motivation and autonomy as an attitude shift, that whatever the work is, even if I don't want to do it, I can think that there might be some higher purpose, that Thakur himself has given me this work. In the idea of competency, we've given different techniques. One is like this idea of flow, of skills and challenges. Whatever it may be, having a growth mindset to increasing our competency and our skill level. That keeps us active, it keeps us more fresh. And final one is relationality. And as Jesus said, be the peacemaker. So if the connection's not coming, at least let me try to see that. The connection is not, it has to be two-sided, but even if it's not, as I gave the example of Ban Bihari Maharaj, if I truly see myself as this Shiva, and the others as this, try to see them as this living Shiva, that's the ultimate connection that we strive for as spiritual aspirants. So that concludes the talk, and now we can take questions from both online as well as the audience. So Rakesh, can you get the microphone? You can please say your name, and then because people.
Pranam Swamiji, I'm Kartikeya, I'm coming from Delhi. So what I've concluded is that we should be attached to work but detached to our mental expectations. Can we conclude that? And my question is, in the end you gave a very beautiful example of how a dog removes the water, but I really struggle with removing these impressions of the work because I'm a businessman and somewhat greed is involved, desire is involved. Without all of these things, you can't function in the business. And so I'm not able to know how to spiritualize these things. So, and all the examples that you gave of work, they somehow were selfless. But the profession that I am in, I'm into real estate development. So this is kind of a selfish work, like business. So is it just selfless work which can be termed into karma yoga, or can it be like this work which can also be spiritualized? Because in Gita, even Arjuna, who was killing in war, that was spiritualized. But somehow I'm not able to like get into that mindset of detaching myself, because at night when I sleep, all of these impressions flood me and causes me anxiety, and I just don't know how to get them out.
Yeah, let's start with that last question, because that's very I think that, so the question is that, I'm starting with the last one first, that the devotee was explaining that, so he's a business person, and that these principles we talked about today, does it only apply to selfless work? What about those living in the world, engaged in work? He's in the real estate. Some of these activities are by nature more selfish, you can say, in one sense. But I think you answered your own question as regarding Arjuna in the Gita. So, one moment. So I think that, and you're right, first of all, that when we do these types of activities, they really stick to our mind afterwards. So I think the thing then is that how do we spiritualize these types of activities? That's what the question is. Not question, discussion. And that's been going on for thousands of years. And it's a great, great struggle. But I think that's why we say so, as I've seen that there's different things we can do for that. One is that some part of what I'm doing should be, as the Gita says, an offering to the Lord. So maybe what I'm doing, some of the money I give to noble causes. So I'm not just taking for myself. That's one important point. Ramakrishna was very particular about that. Sometimes, from lawyers and doctors, he did not want to take things from them because they were coming at the expense of others. But sometimes he made an exception if someone's sincere. So that's one thing, doing some charitable events like that. Secondly, is that afterwards, if you get time going to these ashramas, doing some seva somewhere, it doesn't have to be but it's doing some seva, doing something outside of the activity. Although I'm mentioning right now is outside of the activity, okay? That helps to counter these things. That's one approach, okay? That at least minimizes it. Now, the second one is that within the work itself, so it's my attitude then. So that depends on the individual. So there's different approaches for that. A jnani, for example, will say, I'm just the witness, I'm watching all of these things. But I think that what the Gita says and what Swamiji says about that is that we try to do these works as far as possible, to some extent in an ethical manner. The means count. It's just not the ends, but the means also count as well. So how do we balance the means in this type of corrupted environment, where bribery, where corruption runs very rampant? So I would say that, not knowing your tendency, just in general, Holy Mother said one of the best ways, Bhagavan Shange Joga Jog Koro, means practicing the presence of God, if you're a bhakta. That you have what you just told me, we go to our shrine, we tell that to our Ishta Devata, whoever that may be, we tell them these problems, and we seek solace, we seek a solution from it. See, most of us, we don't want a solution from these problems. But if you're feeling like, Kaikeyi in the Ramayana, when she used to sleep at night, she felt like she was after Rama went to the forest, she felt, when she was sleeping in that bedroom, that queen's bedroom, she felt like she was being stung by 1,000 scorpions at one time. And she's sleeping on the nicest bed. But because what she did to Rama, she was suffering that. So she wanted to go to the forest to be with Rama. Then Rama told her what? No, you stay where you are. Sleeping on that luxurious bed is your tapasya. So same thing, if we can, the way she opened herself to Rama, in the same way, if we can also form that type of connection. You understand that? So one is outside and one is inside. Prayer helps a lot. Prayer helps a lot, this prarthana, and forming that relationship. If you're a jnani, then say everything's unreal. But Thakur said that if we have this aham bodh, we have this sense of I consciousness, we have to start from the world perspective of the world. I think that will help a lot.
But just can we conclude that the entire problem would be solved not after we attain that enlightenment or that state? Before that's all struggle. So
Yes.
Right? Can it be so?
Yes, everything is struggle. Before that, in fact, even before enlightenment, and as long as we have, even if you're aware of the enlightenment, life is still a struggle until this I goes. Thank you very much for the question. Okay. Let me just take one question online so we can just, okay, Pranam Swami, then we'll go back and forth. Is one to be involved with the work but not attached to the work and its results? No, like we said, that first be attached to the results, be attached to the work. So we should do the work with, as we said, autonomy, not being forced, but we find some type of, we have some curiosity and engagement with the work. We have some love for the work. If we don't have that, we can make our mind convinced of it, as long as it is ethical. Secondly, we talked about skillfulness, competency, and third was relationality. So these three things we try to practice. And then once we saturate ourselves with the mind, with good thoughts, then the stage of non-attachment can come. Okay, next one. Do we have any question here? Yeah. Okay, just one question and then we'll get to the other two after. Just the first one, please.
Hello. Pranam Maharaj.
Yeah, the first one.
I have 3 questions. Number 1, whether non-attachment to work lacking sincerity in work. Number 1.
Say that again.
Whether non-attachment to work
Yeah.
lacks sincerity in work.
Okay, so let's just do one at a
And
time.
number 2.
We'll just do one at a time. So whether non-attachment to work means lack of sincerity in work, and so no, but the person has to be again, non-attachment doesn't mean that they're not involved. So that yogi who has learned to be non-attached, that means that they've been attached, and now they've been saturated with this attachment and saturated with good thoughts, and now they're unattaching. As we said before, first attachment and then non-attachment. Okay, what's the next question?
Next, whether any difference between non-attachment and detachment?
Whether any different? No, non-attachment and detachment in this context means
no
the same
difference
thing.
at all.
It depends whether there's any difference between non-attachment and detachment. We say it's basically this anashakta, so same thing.
And the third one, difference between curiosity and inquisitiveness.
Curiosity and what?
Curiosity and inquisitiveness. Whether any difference?
No, the difference between curiosity and inquisitiveness, they're basically the same. Curious means I'm open to ideas. I'm open about your life. I want to learn more. And inquisitiveness they're basically synonyms. It's basically the same thing. Asking questions. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Maharaj.
Thank you. Okay. Pranam Maharaj, it may not be possible for someone to have the 3 conditions you mentioned while performing actions. How does one convert actions into karma yoga then? So if those 3 conditions are not possible, then just one condition. Try to cultivate the motivation. This is what Swamiji really taught to Swami Vivekananda ji and others. That motivation. Kar jonno ami eta kaj korchi. For whose sake am I doing this work? Why am I doing this work? So that motivation should be pure. I'm not doing it to rob somebody else. No, I'm doing it if that motivation is unselfish. That's the goal. And if it's not, we should be aware of it, and we should strive by degrees to make it more and more unselfish. Okay. And final one, what should be the goal of the student first to meet the academic curriculum or to get perfection in the love subject? I think the goal is, if you ask me, I think the goal is love for the subject. I'll give my own personal example. We know before I joined, I was a lawyer. So I remember when preparing for this, it's called the bar examination. I remember that everybody was talking about, if I pass this, I'll become they're thinking about it as a career opportunity. But I felt that if you get a love for the subject, then these other things automatically come. Swamiji says the same thing. Perfect the means and the ends must come. So by all means, first love the subject. And by loving the subject, also you learn you'll learn better actually. You'll learn the academic curriculum, but it'll stick with you more. It's like learning because your parents are telling you to do so, and learning because you love it. You love the subject. Okay, then someone says, first program the mind with good thoughts, and then deprogram through detachment. Okay, that's correct. How to do deprogramming? There's no deprogramming. Deprogramming is just constantly saturating ourselves with good thoughts, and then just saturate yourself with good holy thoughts. Okay. Fine. Okay. When a work has no other people involved, like studying for exam, then what is the meaning of connection in this regard? That's the last question. So if there's no other people involved, what is the meaning of connection? So connection could be with the Lord. It could be with ourselves too. Connecting means that we get new insights. We learn most about ourselves. It's funny that, we're always interested in learning about everything else but ourselves. Sri Aurobindo talked about this. There's a nice text he wrote, Integral Education, and he mentioned this, that he says that when a child is young, they should first be taught how to look at their own mind. What's going on in my mind? What's going on with my feelings? Become very self-aware. That's the last thing we teach our children, actually. That's the last thing we're taught. That's why later on when we try to practice meditation, our mind does anything but go inside. We don't know what's going on inside. So this is Sri Aurobindo's nice training. First, train the mind to know what's going on inside. And it has to start from infancy. Okay, with that, we've gone overboard. I thank all of you. Thank you all for your patience. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat.